on every single, and so they were eyes closed, mouth. I mean, it just looked ridiculous. And I was laughing so hard, I literally fell on the floor. And I thought, this is too funny not to post.
That we have people coming from all over the country, and he's like, "I'm 100 years old. It's my birthday. I think I can go squirrel hunting."
Diabetic retinopathy happens 10 to 15 years before you ever wake up blind in one eye. Hard because I don't know why it hit me this hard because she had Alzheimer's and we knew for, 10 years she was going to pass. And
Knowing that it's coming doesn't make it easier. It makes it different, but not easier, I think.
yeah, they lost their provider. They lost their father. She lost her husband because he didn't want to prioritize himself. It was a selfless attitude he had, but it cost them him.
Mm.
The focus of the holidays, the Thanksgiving, the Christmases, the birthdays, isn't the food, it's the people. My first thing that I tell my clients is,
All right, welcome to the Charting Life podcast. Basically, this is where we like to dive into life's uncharted territories through meaningful conversations and always a healthy dose of laughter. Today, we're going to talk about health and try to get into tips, myths, advice, weight loss, and as much as we can there, and also the kind of mindset that helps us succeed, especially if you're like me and you've kind of failed or been unsuccessful many times before. So before we get into the conversation at hand, let me introduce you to our guest, Jojo Tabarez. Is that pronounced that correctly?
yes.
All right. Whenever I worked at a hotel, it was kind of international guests all over the place. I would ask them for their last name. They'll pronounce it to me, especially if it's like way out in left field for me at least. And then I would say their name correctly, and they were always amazed. I'm like, yes, that little trick, make sure I get their name first. But anyways, Jojo has been a health coach for the last 4 years. After finding the programs that you now coach back in 2020, you lost 40 pounds. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
And you helped your husband lose 60 pounds. It's made an enormous difference in your life because you went from being overweight and living your entire life on your couch with fibro fatigue and having more energy at 62 now than you had in your late 20s. Again, that's absolutely incredible. You have an LLC called Heaven and Health because the first determines where you go when you leave this earth, and the other determines how well you live while you're here. That is quite a bit of stuff that you got there. It's an incredible journey. We'll get into some of that. I'm definitely excited to get into that. Is there anything that we left out? Anything else you want to mention, kind of who you are, some of your hobbies, interests, or to let people get an idea for who you are?
Well, I am 62. I have been married for 38 years. I have two children. One is 35. She is pregnant with our first grandchild. And my other is 25, and he is engaged. And just a little weird known fact about I'm 5 foot nothing and I wear children's shoes. So
All right. It might cost a little bit less doing children's shoes. You may not have as many, you have the fun styles, but not the professional styles. But
yeah, Dora the Explorer is really popular.
right, right. My son is now graduated up to adult shoes, and he can actually fit into my wife's shoes. So it's like, all right, he's getting bigger, and that's a fun part of that journey there. So I like to ask a couple of stories. In general, I think we could talk about data all over the place, but I think a lot of that is expressed well through stories. So just a couple of stories to kind of thoughts to kind of get the conversation going, and again, so we can understand you a little bit better. In general, what was your family life like growing up? Do you have mom and dad? Do you have siblings? What was that like?
Yeah, my mom and dad got married very young. They were of Jewish heritage and raised us as atheists, but I find it interesting. None of the three of us are. I have a younger sister who's 18 months younger and a brother who is 4 years younger. And we moved around a lot. It sort of felt like anytime my dad's company needed a volunteer to move cross country, his hand went up.
Okay, yeah, it was so it was all around the country, or did you stay in like certain sections, like the Midwest, or how? What was that like?
Well, let's see. I was born in Colorado. I was there for 2 weeks. We moved to, let's see, Colorado to Florida. We lived in several mobile homes and apartments in Florida. And then we moved to New York. I was there in several different houses, one apartment in several houses. and for about 8 years. And then we moved to Virginia for 18 months and then California all over. And then I got married and we kept moving. So I'm here in Indiana now.
Right. All right, that is all over the place. I think that's pretty awesome. At one point, I would like to hit all 50 U.S. states. I'm a little bit behind at the moment, but that I think that would be pretty interesting. But speaking of travel, do you have any interesting travel experiences, whether it's vacation or moving, where either things went really well and had a great special moment, or things went entirely off the rails and you just kind of have to shake your head and laugh later? Any stories like that that you got?
Yeah, I don't know what it is about me. You can see that I look so much like a terrorist. But
Oh, no.
there were many, many times where I was traveling after 2020 and
Mhm.
I would get stopped. Everybody else was fine, but I would get, it was like every single time, and they wanded me and they wanded everything in my suitcase went through twice, and I almost was late for my plane flight one time because they had to, and I kept asking myself, do I look like a terrorist? I don't know what it is.
Right. Oh man, yeah, that can certainly be a bit difficult. I know there's some airports. So I live in the Louisville area. The Louisville airport, you can always get through it in about 20 or 30 minutes from check-in all the way to the boarding, unless there's something crazy going on. But usually, the I think the suggestion is about 2 hours. I imagine if you're always hitting that, you might have to put in the back of your mind, go a little bit earlier so
Yeah.
you can hit that. So and you mentioned you grew up, your parents were Jewish by ethnicity, but atheist. And so, what was your faith journey like? Kind of where are you now, and just kind of a brief overview of where you started and how you got to where you are now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was raised by two atheists of Jewish heritage. I married a non-practicing Catholic and became a non-denominational Christian due in part to some Amway meetings and a Jehovah's Witness who came to my door.
Well, that's interesting.
You may need a program for this, I don't know.
Right. Okay. And
But now,
so,
I mean, I am fully in the church and I am, ministering to people, body, mind, and spirit. And I'm talking to my relatives as well.
all right, that is that's really interesting. Are your siblings kind of in a similar boat, or are they kind of
My
uh,
brother is a Christian and my sister is searching. My
right?
mom actually accepted the Lord right before she passed away 2 months ago of Alzheimer's. So talking to
And
my
I'm sorry.
dad.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, whenever for anyone who's listening, they are going to be all over the place, I think, as far as the spectrum of faith. But even if, someone is atheist or agnostic or of another faith, faith plays an important role in our life, whether you are very, you're either Christian and you kind of come out of the womb being saved or whatever the deal is, or if you are completely against God, that still defines kind of who we are. So I always like
Yeah.
to ask questions about that, kind of see where you ended up. So today we're going to talk about health, and we're going to kind of cover a few different things, like I said, some myths and some really just helpful tips as well. I know you talk a lot about weight loss, but more than just weight loss. And then we're going to kind of get over to probably the mindset that we have when we're trying to figure out how we live, and it's not just for us individually. And you know so I don't want to tease that too much, but how did you get interested beyond like the introduction? Like what kind of got you interested? Was that finally 2020 hit and you were just needed a change, or what kind of led you into that down the path that you are today?
Well, I had had fibro probably most of my life. I mean, I remember being a little kid and thinking, how is it my brother and my sister have the energy to sit here and pull weeds out of the yard for a couple of hours? I was like, after 20 minutes, I'm like, you know. And I've studied a lot about health ever since. And as a mom, you have kids, you have to deal with those kind of, so it's been something that's been on my mind and on my heart for a long time. And then I was thin my most of my life, whereas my husband was overweight even from childhood. So the two of us had very different issues, very different needs. And when I was I forgot what it was, like 2017 or something like that, I had a hysterectomy. And inside of 6 months, I had gained all this weight. And for a little person, it was a lot of weight. And so I tried everything on my own to lose. I could not lose. I never lost 1 ounce on my
Wow.
own. My husband lost 5, 10, 20 pounds, but either he'd gain it back or it didn't make a big enough difference in his health. And so watching the two of us struggling, a friend of mine on Facebook made a post. And I remember making kind of a snot because I'm kind of snarky. I like humor a lot. And
Right.
so I made some kind of comment, and she wasn't sure if I was serious or if I was joking. And so she went and messaged me and said, I don't know if you're joking or not, but I think I can help you. And I had never thought about weight loss and health this way before. And she had several different programs, and it was very individual. And I actually lost weight. And because I did, I helped my husband. And so, yeah, I got and also because there's so many different things that can happen in your life as you age. And then as you are unhealthy, there are some things that I can help reverse, but there are some things that you can't reverse.
Right.
And we can talk a little bit later about that. My husband has two of those issues. And I want to help people avoid all of that.
All right. Absolutely. You know, you had a in one of your videos of the weight loss myths. I thought you said something very wonderful, and it's true, but sometimes we may not want to think about it. Is that no one gets to the end of their life and thought, I regret getting healthy. And I think that's you, you may not like having to wake up in the morning and go for a walk, or you may not like some of the steps along the way. And I'd say part of that is that's life. Not everything is going to be pleasurable. And there is actually something to say about beauty and pain and how we can grow through trials. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. But I just think that's a really interesting quote. Is you get to the end of your life and think, I wish I wasn't that this healthy. I had a great great grandpa. He lived to be about 105 years old. Technically, it was 104, but it was like 2 days before, or 2 months before his birthday. So we rounded up, say it's 105. After you get over the triple digits, you
Yeah.
earned that extra that extra number there. But he lived out on a farm out in Kentucky, and he basically raised all of his crops on his own. He also grew and made his own tobacco. So he had his own chewing tobacco all the time, which may not have been the best deal, but he was at least raising it pure, as opposed to adding all the stuff to it. But I remember we would go over there, and the food, even though I was younger, I didn't like to have vegetables, but they were a lot better because they were fresh from the ground. They would go to the store, maybe get milk or certain meat aspects, but for the most part, he grew everything. And a little bit of ADHD, so I got him down, go down these little rabbit trails, and this just kind of describes his health. Every day, even once he hit triple digits, he had a little lean-to shed where he was going out there with a knife and whittling wood and made some really good stuff. But his 100th birthday, we had people from all over the country coming in. I mean, you have a really big family by that point, and he tried sneaking off before they went. And his daughter was, well, where are you going? And he's like, I'm going squirrel hunting. She's like, well, you can't. You do that. We have people coming from all over the country. And he's like, I'm 100 years old. It's my birthday. I think I can go squirrel hunting. And that is, I think that's kind of a testament to that. And being healthy and all of that. So I think that's definitely a great goal to be able to get there. And I just sometimes think back to that, and it is a little bit of the snarkiness, and also being in good health helps you to be there.
Yeah.
So one of the things when it comes to health, like you mentioned, there was a post that you responded on. There, it seems like there's probably a ratio of 7 wild claims per person on the internet. It is all over the place. Some are very good, some are very not so good, and there's like warring factions over whether it's medicine only, or you do the shots, or this kind of diet, or that, or whatever. Um, Before we get into some specifics, just I'd like to kind of ask like your mental math. How do you try to decipher good claims from completely incorrect, and then maybe ones that need a little bit of tweaking? How do you try to figure out that sort of mental math there?
Well, I think it really does depend on what they're talking about, because there are lots of things that can help some people, and there are some things that are very unhealthy. And there are some things that it just really depends on how you do it. And like, there's certain things that are meant to be short term.
Hmm.
And so people are now doing those things long term, which is detrimental to your health. It's just really, bottom line, it depends on the person. It
Fair enough.
really does, because everybody's body is different. I'm 5 foot nothing and I wear children's shoes. My husband is 5'8", very broad, very muscular, and he's a man. I'm a woman. When you get older, your body changes. As you start losing weight, your body is changing. Everything is changing, and you really need to tailor what you're doing to your body, to your mindset, to your lifestyle, and your habits. And then you need to work on those mindsets and habits as you're losing the weight. And things change. So it really, really depends on the person. Some things, for some people, it's just like strawberries.
Hmm.
They're natural. I love them. They're
Yeah,
good, right? Some people are allergic to strawberries. Bad for them.
right. Fair
It
enough.
may
Yeah.
strawberries are really good for me, but if you're allergic to, that's bad for you. You can't have this. It really does depend on the person.
Yeah, that is a fair point. I know my son, it's amazing. He will eat fruits and vegetables. As he's gotten older, he realized it's okay to not like certain vegetables. So we'll try to sneak it in a little bit. If my wife's making pasta or something, she'll cut up maybe zucchini or squash or whatever it is and cut it really small. And you can't even hardly tell that it's in there. And he's having, his vegetables. He loves fruit, and we're trying to help balance that out as best as possible. Because every kid's going to love sugar as much sugar as they can tolerate. So we try to help balance that out. So at a young age, help him try to start to get those disciplines in. Because
Brilliant.
older, it's definitely more difficult. I have certainly learned that. I've done some great, let's call it poverty diets when I was young on my own, had my own apartment. There was one point when I think my grandma and grandpa came to visit me. I was living in Florida, opened my refrigerator. I had some ramen noodles on the shelf, opened my refrigerator, and I had a vial of insulin. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and some blackberry jelly. And that was about it. And so, that's not really the healthiest way to lose weight. It is an effect of your circumstances, but uh, anyway, so again, going a little bit off there, but I think it's a really good point you mentioned. It's kind of tailored to the person. I know that's some of the work that you do. Can you maybe
Yes.
describe some of that? I know you probably can't share too many details of other people's personal aspects of that, um, but so if somebody were to come to you and say, okay, I need a health coach. Is that the proper title for one? And then what are some questions that you ask to lead them kind of on that journey?
Well, I have a form that I usually send out because there are a lot of different questions. Like if you're a type 1 diabetic, that's very different. It depends on your health. It depends on the health goals. It depends on your lifestyle. So I have a form that I send out that has a bunch of questions. And then when that comes back, I look at that to see which of the programs that I have best suits that person's need. And then I get on the phone with them and we talk through some of those things. I share what that program would look like. I confirm some things because sometimes people don't put things on the form that they should, or they put it in there incorrectly. So I just confirm some things. And then I walk them through, okay, here's what I would do to start. Now, keep in mind that may change as their body changes and their lifestyle changes. um I may need to switch the program, I may need to tweak the program, but I go through all of those things with them. And so it depends on, they're if they're type 1 diabetic, they're type 2 diabetic, if they
Right.
have gout, if they are a teenager, if they are nursing, you know if they are doing a lot of exercise. I mean, there are certain things that will not sustain that amount of, like my husband, when I started, I was living my life on my couch. I was not
Right.
exercising. I was barely, I mean, literally, I would have to, my husband would bring a chair into the bathroom so that I could rest my elbows on the counter so that I could blow dry just the top part of my hair. And then I had to rest.
I think you
That,
mentioned fibromyalgia. Was that correct? And that is
that
a one's not experienced it. It's a very painful uh,
It
situation.
was painful, but for me, it was mostly energy. I've had no, I don't think I would be diagnosed with it anymore because when I lost the weight, I also realized I wasn't getting the nutrition my body needed. So because I'm now doing that, that's why at 62, I have all this energy that I didn't have at 27. And
Okay.
so, but that comes from knowing what that, so I was, I was lying on my couch. I'm not even exaggerating. That's my life. That was my life. My husband, he had a lot of energy, but he could have had more energy, and he had very bad diabetes, he had high blood pressure. And so, And all the doctors kept saying, lose weight. So he was trying. He went out and he exercised. He still does. 63 years old now, exercising at the gym 6 days a week, very
That,
hard with our 25-year-old son. Okay. And he was doing that before, and he was exercising like a madman, not losing any weight. So his type of need for nutrition was very different from mine because he was exercising a massive amount. I was laying on the couch a massive amount. That was very different. So it really depends on a lot of different things. And that's why I kind of have like an intake consultation to talk about that first. And then I can figure out, and then it's sometimes trial and error because people have like different things that are kind of halfway in between. So we
right.
tweak it and we see what works.
Yeah, I think that that is a sounds about like the right way you two want to go through that. And I think, again, it's one size fits all does not quite work because our bodies are different composition. And
Yep.
I think it's interesting how, as just in general, we move along through time. There's different, we might have an article that says one thing or another. I mean, you got this fad diet or whatever it is, but we're realizing there are so many factors that goes into your health. Of
Yeah.
course, weight is one of them, but it could one of the metabolism is one of the things that focuses a lot. But I've been discovering sleep is a big one too. If you're not sleeping well,
Yes.
and I've been trying to, me and my wife are trying to work through on some of the details. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. I have gained weight over the last few years, and well, actually, I want to kind of work that into part of the story here in a minute. But for several years, have our son. I don't say too much of it. Want him to be able, when as he gets older, wants to be able to kind of share his story whenever he can, but and how to whatever degree he wants to. But he has special needs, and it does involve sleep issues. Where we don't know, some of it's unknown. It's just kind of an interesting thing. But as parents, if you have a special need child, you're also not sleeping well if they're not sleeping well.
Yeah.
And so close to a decade, we did not have a single, I would say, month where we had a week or two here and there, but there was no single like month that we had good sleep. It was always interrupted or that sort of thing, and that takes a toll on you after a while. But yeah, I think like you said, there's so many different factors that goes into it, and I imagine it makes it a little tougher if people have different conditions or different situations where they would have contradictory health, maybe diets, for example. So if there's some that tries to emphasize one type of food, and so they have so let's say they have condition A. Let's say they have type 1 diabetes. Okay. So there's certain foods I want to watch out for. I know definitely like the complex carbohydrates, a lot of starchy stuff. I want to be careful on those. But if I were to have another condition that would do better on, the carbohydrates may not be the right one, but you see what I'm saying? Like there's definitely where there's an intersection where they aren't compatible. I'm sure that makes some kind of a challenge.
It really depends. I haven't had too many people where there was a problem. I can usually figure out what is the best program. I do tweak it a little bit anyway. But so for what I do, I have a team of mentor coaches. So if I ever have a client, I mean, I am committed to making sure that client wins with me. So if I can't do that, I can go to my coach or her coach and get the answers for them. So if there is, but I haven't had that too often where there's something that we just couldn't figure out, or I needed on my own that I couldn't figure out. But I do have those, that opportunity to go to my coach and my mentor coaches to find out, okay, what would you do for this kind of person? And that usually works.
Yeah, that is awesome. I think it is interesting just in life when you're connected to more people, you're connected
Yeah,
to more scenarios, even the odd scenarios here and there, and you can be
yeah.
able to kind of be able to bring that together. So I mentioned before we started recording, I want to throw a really wild idea diet up here, and you can say whatever you want to say it. And if it's really horrible, you just, or if it's great, or if there's something redeemable out of it, I don't have a feeling of where it's going to go. So I mentioned ADHD for a little bit. One of the things with people with ADHD, there's you really gravitate to the novel. So you need something new and fresh. And as it becomes less fresh, you start to fall off. And I know there's plenty of people that I know of who try the diets, they kind of fall, even if it's good for them. And it's not just diets, but whatever the program that might work for them, they kind of falls off because it's not quite novel. And so I just had this wild idea. If you, let's say you had 3 or 4 or 5 different ones that are not horrible on their own, And then just every 2 or 3 weeks, you just switch from one to the other. Maybe go from Weight Watchers to keto to whatever. And so, what are your thoughts if somebody were to say, you know what, let's just try something ridiculous? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it really depends on what works for you. I do have that sometimes where somebody is, I mean, if you only have 10, 15, 20 pounds to lose, it doesn't take very long. Um, because most women lose, 1 to 3 pounds a week. Most men will lose a little bit more, because y'all are luckier than we are. Your body works better. You have more muscle than we do, and that's why. But anyway, when you have somebody who has to lose 100, 150 pounds, they are on a plan for weight loss for a long time. And there can be that kind of fatigue for what they've been doing. Me, I could eat the same thing every day and never have a problem. If I like it, I like it. Yes, my husband, very different. He needs a lot of
Right.
spice, he needs a lot of variety. And for some people, that can become a problem. There are ways that I can help with that because there are lots of, it's not like you're eating salad all the time or you're eating bland things or you're eating, you eat 6 times a day, small meals. That's how actually God created us to eat small
Okay.
meals. Yeah. So I have a brand new client, which is so funny because her name is my mom's name. My mom passed away and I got a client with her name. And she was amazed that I get to eat every 2 to 3 hours. This is great. Right. So it's not as difficult on the plans that I have for people
Mhm.
because there's a lot of variety of food and there's a lot of different things that you can make. And as you talked about with your son who doesn't like certain vegetables and you kind of, make them smaller and there are recipes. I was one of those people. I am very picky eater. I
Right. Yeah.
always have been a very picky eater. And when I was very young, my mother in those days, you had, remember Popeye? I
Oh,
can't
right.
remember
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
can of spinach. To
Mm.
me, canned spinach was slimy and icky, and I did not like spinach. And I thought that's what spinach was.
Right.
That's not what spinach is. It's a
No.
it's good. It's not slimy. It's not. So, first of all, if you have fresh vegetables, fresh food, good foods, they're much better. But if you have a variety of ways of making them, I don't like cauliflower. I mean,
Right.
uh, yeah, no, huh? But because it has this aroma and then it's kind of bland but if you not grind it, but if you rice it, so you put it in a blender and make it riced
Right. Uh-huh.
cauliflower, that's good. You can make a pizza.
Okay. Yeah. And I imagine you add some seasonings in there too that would
Yeah.
also add some extra flavor if it is a little bit more
Right.
on the bland side.
My son is a pizza snob. There are some pizzas he will not eat because they are not good. He loves
Yeah.
my pizza. It's fresh, it's healthy. And I make pizzas from cauliflower, but when you taste it, it doesn't taste like cauliflower. It tastes good.
Right. And that's good to hear. One of the things, and probably in another episode I'll go a little bit further on this, but my wife and I were ended up doing like a vegan diet for a while, and it was nice. It did kind of help, with certain things, and my wife was able to do more vegetables because, you know, she was kind of restricted on as many vegetables as she liked. But one of the things that really kind of bugged me towards the end is they were saying, "Oh, this tastes just like chicken. This tastes just like." They would kind of overpromise the flavors. I'm like, let's just be honest about what it is. It's still mushrooms or whatever whatever the particular thing is, and that's fine. Just be honest about it. But that is good, especially if cauliflower might be more of like a blank canvas, and then you can be able to add seasonings to it, and that could certainly help. I want to get into a couple of the myths, and then I really want to get into the story, especially the one with your husband. Kind of use that as a way to kind of help, so we can think about our lives and um, how we're living in our mindsets. One of the myths you mentioned is that snacking is bad, and I know during holidays. So the myth is that snacking is bad. So I'll let you kind of quickly, debunk that. But I know that especially on holidays, that can be especially difficult. So I
Yes.
guess, what do you have on that thought?
Well, that's one of the things that because you really were created to eat 6 small meals a day every 2 to 3 hours. And so I get a lot of people in the beginning who say, well, oh, you're not supposed to be snacking on things all the day, and you're not supposed to eat late at night. And that's a myth, because what your body needs is a um, consistent level of energy. So people who, and I have a lot of clients who started off eating one meal a day. That was my husband. Basically,
Right.
one meal a day, and then he snacked all night. That was okay, another thing.
Yeah, that can get
But
you
it's
there.
what the snack is. It's not snacking that's bad for you. Eating consistently is good for you. By the way, it stabilizes your blood sugar
Hmm.
to eat consistently, because then it's not, up and down. With eating three big meals a day, it's kind of all over the place. But when you eat, it's what you eat. So are you snacking on potato chips, candy bars,
Hmm.
donuts, or are you
Right.
snacking on hummus and maybe carrots, or you know something that, or fruit, or like a pieces of apple and um what is that nut butter,
Was it the hazelnut or the Nutella? Was the I don't know if that's the one you were going
not
for. I don't
Nutella, because it has a lot of other stuff in it,
feel
but
like
there
that's probably
you can get like clean peanut butter that is just peanuts, and just do, I mean, it's
yeah. I've been
protein, right? It's
yeah,
what you're snacking on. It's not snacking.
right.
That's the key.
Yeah. So I will one of my easier snacks is either uh kind of default to nuts like almonds, maybe some peanuts, ones that are maybe has some salt, but that's about it. And then I've noticed in the grocery store you can get it. It's gonna have like the oil at the top. You got to mix it in real good. But I've actually enjoyed. It's hard to go back to the like the Jif or the whatever peanut butters after you have the legitimate like the actual like peanut butter. One of
The
the things I've
real stuff.
yeah one of the things I've tried to do, and it is I'm a little bit better at it sometimes than others, but especially if we're doing like family gatherings, holidays, potluck, that sort of thing, and you have a variety of desserts that look amazing. You got cakes, pies, cookie cakes, whatever. I've tried to employ the law of diminishing returns. And so basically, the first bite, at least for me, is amazing. And, I might enjoy the second and third bite 90%, instead of 100% like the first one. And so instead of doing some, like cut it like a pie or a cake into eighth pieces, I might do a quarter of an eighth or something of that nature. So it's a little thinner. You can still have, it's not going to be good for you. Just know no matter how many ways you slice it. But if you really are wanting just a little taste of something, like a one or two
Yes.
thing is a lot better than 75 carbs for this big awesome pecan pie. Just a smaller little bit is I think is a um, would seem to be working out better if you are going to have some kind of snack. Um, yeah. Any other, I guess, rules of thumb if you're at like a holiday gathering, big family thing where everyone's, would you try to say what, depending on the particular health focus of the individual, would you try to say maybe get a little bit closer to like a vegetable over a casserole if you can help it, or maybe the meat over something else? Is there like what's a rule of thumb that you would probably suggest?
Well, it's interesting what you mentioned before, because that's what we call stop, challenge, and choose.
Okay,
Having a bite of something,
sure.
because it's about, you have to learn to live life healthy. So there are going to be times. My husband and I celebrated our 38th wedding anniversary. We went out to eat. We had cake.
Hmm.
I didn't have cake. I had, cake.
Right.
But yes, healthy things. There's some things when you go to a place that's got it like a buffet, or you go to a church function, or there's a lot of food at church functions.
Oh yeah, with a lot
And
of butter and a
so,
lot of stuff too. It mixed in with it.
yeah, my first thing that I tell my clients is, you're not really there to eat. You're
Hmm.
there to connect with people. And so the focus of this event, the focus of the holidays, the Thanksgiving, the Christmases, the birthdays, isn't the food, it's the people. And so if you make the focus the people and relationships, and being connected with them, the food is secondary. Yeah, you need to eat, but it's
Hmm.
the people. So if you keep that in mind, that's the first thing. Second of all, if you do need to eat and there's a lot of food there, especially for people where the food, you have a lot of food noise, where the food just kind of calls your name, you know. And some people, like my husband, was actually addicted to sweets and things like that, like physically addicted, because he would eat it all the time. And that's what the food industry, we could have a whole different thing on the food industry. But that's what they bank on. That's why they put those things in there. So it is not your fault. The food industry does that on purpose so you can keep buying. But
Mhm.
those things can beckon you because you've eaten sugar. And so you crave the sugar and you see it. So it's really hard to say no. So the
Mhm.
stop, challenge, and choose is great, where you stop yourself and you say, okay, I am going to choose. I'm going to challenge myself to choose to do the things that are going to serve me because having it, having a big thing of cake instead of a little slice or a little piece, so that's something that you can do, but you could also have your focus be on, I tell people, even if they're on plan and they're going to kind of go off plan because they see something during the holidays that they wouldn't normally have. Some people, some of my clients are like, nope, I'm not going to have any of the cake and the cookies and all of this. I just won't do it. And that's fine for them. They stay completely on plan. And some of my clients say, well, I'm just going to go completely off the rails and for that one meal and have whatever I want. Other clients, it's a choice you make. And so I bring that up to them because it's their choice. What are you wanting to do? So that when you, because what I don't want is the guilt and the condemnation, because that's worse than eating something that's bad for you. It's way worse. So, but when you go in, you can focus on protein and vegetables. So if you go someplace and they don't have the healthiest choices, like a lot of times when you go to church functions, there's a lot of stuff with all this sauce and sugar and cakes and stuff like. So do grab for the protein, the clean protein, and some vegetables. Those are safe things and they're healthier things, especially when you, but if you're like going to restaurants, there are some, I mean, restaurants are so used to people being on different diets and programs and things like that. And you can actually ask a restaurant, the waitress, can you do this much of this and not put this on? And they'll do it for you.
Yeah,
Ask.
that's yeah. If you don't ask, you'll never know.
Yeah.
So those are some incredibly great helpful tips. And so I really like your approach. I know you mentioned about how your mindset is going to really make a big determination if you try to go jump all in on some kind of a plan, but your mindset isn't right. It's I don't want to guarantee failure, but you're setting yourself up for failure if you don't go in with a proper mindset. And so that I feel like that's uh, kind of the heart behind what's going, the heart and mind. But that certainly kind of helps drive how you're thinking. And I really love what you mentioned about the gatherings. Why are you there? And so I think that and that's something we can ask about every area of life. But yeah, why are you there? What are you doing? And I want to build off that a little bit. And I know when you have some stories about your husband as well. I know, I'm sure men and women both have their own unique spin on this, but there's a mindset that can very well be that I'm looking after my family, I'm taking care of them. I will, self-sacrifice is seen as a virtue. And there are ways where it is, and there's ways where it can go beyond helpful. And, a lot of times I hear people say, it's like, as long as my family is taken care of, I'm okay. But a way to do that long term is if you were taking care of yourself. And I know I've spent, part of the last 2 years not really doing that. And so over the last several months, I've been trying to fix that a bit. And so I've realized that, I'm 35 now. I'm going to be getting older. Lord willing, and not have a car wreck or something like that. But I'm getting to the point I want to make sure that I'm there for my wife and my son as long as possible and with a better quality of life. I'd rather not spend the last 20 years of life barely able to move because I didn't take care of myself. And
Yes.
I think, I have a weird hypothesis and something I'll probably just explore. And again, this is speaking in general terms, okay? Not every man's the same, not every woman's the same, but I almost would imagine the physical health side that a man might have in traditional trying to take care of your family, physical breakdown, or my diet's gonna be different. I imagine many moms might have the mental health version of that, where as long as I take everyone else, I will worry about myself, but that's just a weird hypothesis. And if you want to weigh in on that for a moment, but I like how you've mentioned the idea of stewarding over your body. It's not just my body. Yes, I have my physical being that I'm using, but it's about myself years later and my family too. And so I know you have some stories. I'll be quiet for a second. I'll let you share some of that. And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so you're so right. I do have, and it's just exactly what you started talking about. I was talking to a friend on Facebook one day, and she had previously wanted me to talk to her husband about losing weight because men carry weight around mostly in their stomach, and that's very dangerous for them, for their heart. It can cause later heart attacks or strokes or things like that, which was what I was afraid of with my husband because he was almost 300 pounds at one point. And he said, no, I don't have time for this. I'm working, and God bless him. His head, his heart was for his family. He was working, and that was the priority he had. But he went to go help his daughter, who I believe was pregnant at the time, and um, he was shoveling her snow while I was having a chat on Messenger with her. And she texted me over Messenger that her husband passed away of a heart attack right then and there.
Mm.
Prioritizing your health, both women and men, isn't just for you because you can't be there. They lost their provider. They lost their father. She lost her husband because he didn't want to prioritize himself. It was a selfless attitude he had, but it cost them him.
Mm.
And I'm gonna cry. I don't want that for anybody. And then there's the other side of it that you were talking about. You can have all kinds of problems that limit yourself because you're not healthy. So, like for me, I wasn't healthy. So, what was I doing for my family sitting on my couch? Nothing,
Right.
right? What was my husband has diabetic retinopathy. Now, we did not know how that worked. One day, I mean, I got him healthy in 2020, and he did not even have pre-diabetes. His blood pressure went down. I mean, it was great. So we were not afraid of a heart attack or a stroke.
Right. Got that out of the way.
Yeah. So there are things you can absolutely prevent. You can get off diabetic medication and blood pressure medication and cholesterol medication. You can do all of that stuff. Some of the stuff you cannot get back. So one day, about 2 years ago, I think it was now, my husband woke up blind in one eye. That is so scary.
Mhm.
He could not see anything out of that eye, just waking up, it just bam. And we went to two emergency rooms to try and figure this out. Come to find out, it was diabetic retinopathy, and he had I think it's like the blood vessels that burst, and that's why you can't see. And so we went, thank God, the Lord led us to this wonderful specialist who'd been doing this for 35 years. He said, Richard, my husband, was one of the worst he'd ever seen. And he kept trying to tell us, I don't know if I can help him. And we thought he was being humble. So
Mhm.
we didn't pay attention to what he said. We just kept thinking, okay, he's going to get healed. And he was. He's able to see. But diabetic retinopathy happens 10 to 15 years before you ever wake up blind in one eye. So in 2020, when we thought he's getting the clear, right? I wish I found these programs 10 to 15 years prior because he would not have gone through 2 years of shots in his eyes and surgery on his eye and I wouldn't have had, I mean, I have a phobia of eyes, and this is just if it had happened to me, I think I probably would have said, I'll just go blind because I don't think I could have handled. He was a real trooper, and it's been something that and he has to be monitored for the rest of his life because it could happen again. We were talking to one woman because that specialist, that's all he does. He's not a regular ophthalmologist. That's all he does. It's a huge office of him and I don't know, a few other eye surgeons, specialists. And they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of patients that this happens to. We didn't even know it was a thing. And we were sitting in the office with a woman who was sitting right next to my husband who had a glass eye because the guy who tried to fix her problem, who by the way we were going to go with,
Hmm.
botched it and she lost
Wow.
her eye. So there are things that can happen. And now she's blind in that eye, and he botched the other one, and she was not able to see much out of that eye either. So that severely limits what you can do. But then there are things like just living unhealthy. You don't have the energy to do for your family. You don't have, you fall asleep in the middle of things, you don't have the energy you need to do whatever God's mission for you is or whatever your goals are. There's only so much you can do, whether your life is cut short because of being unhealthy, or you just don't have as much health to be able to do those. In my case, I couldn't do anything. I was just on my couch.
Right.
I mean, one time I actually had to hang up the phone with my mother because I couldn't have the energy to do this.
Wow.
So there are things that will limit you because you're not healthy. And that affects not just you, but your family, your mission
Hmm.
in life, your work, whatever it is. If you don't have your health, there's not a whole lot other stuff that you have.
Right. Yeah. I tend to think in analogies a lot, but it almost sounds like maybe the older you get and the worse it's not just age, but the worse you are. Try to take your car that's on empty up a large hill. It's going to be very difficult to get it. You're going to be the little
But
engine that maybe did it. you know,
yeah, the
uh,
little engine that really couldn't. So
right.
you have, yeah, because when you're young, you think, oh, I'm young, I'm invincible, nothing can hurt me, and in a way, you're right.
Mhm.
But after a while, your body says, hello, knucklehead, I am not able to overcome this anymore. It gets less and less forgiving of our mistreatment of our bodies as we age. So you think about Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah, I just saw something, little thing on him on exercise recently. I thought it was very interesting. But
See,
he's
he's been
I've kind of
healthy his whole life,
mhm.
which is, and your, what was it, your grandfather, your
Great great grandfather. So two
great
greats.
grandfather, you don't get to be in your hundreds abusing your body.
Right.
Or neglecting. You don't. And so, once you have health, you there's more of what you can do every day, and you can do more of it. You have more days as well.
Yeah. I think that is definitely something to chew on, something that we could all, examine in our lives because it's not just about us. And I know if some people are struggling with like depression, for example, it tends to not selfishly make it about you, but it gets harder to see the
Yeah,
ripple effect
yeah,
that you make. But yeah, I think, and I do like the idea of stewarding because it is my body, but it's more than that. And I gotta say, I know we're getting in towards the end of the time that we set aside. I could probably go in dozens of different directions. I absolutely love this conversation, and thank you for sharing your story. I
absolutely.
have a few more questions I like to ask. They're interesting, a little bit fun. These are rapid-ish fire. We don't need to take a long time on each of these. But like I said, I do like the idea of analogies, and with this show, charting life, we're trying to kind of unchart or kind of like almost like map the areas of life that might not have an exact word for word manual that we really need for. I say that a little hard to say that exactly, even as theologically sound as I'm trying to get it. But life can be difficult, and sometimes you're kind of feeling your way forward. And so we're trying to do that. And do like to use like an island analogy. So we're going to go bounce back and forth here. So you're tasked with charting a previously unexplored island and can bring 5 people with you, living or dead, as long as it's real. And I try to take the like major religious figures off the table, so can't bring Jesus. Um, the only
Fine.
distinction you have is one person needs to be able to help you survive the elements. One person to tell the story, and then 3 others of your choosing. Who are you taking with you?
Well, I think somebody to chart everything would probably be like Marco Polo or somebody like that, because and I would have no idea. That's not my area of expertise.
Right.
And
Right.
even geographically, I'm not even sure, where things are in the world. So I think I would take somebody like that. And then to tell the story, I would say my son. My son is he's a director of films, and also he's a screenwriter, and he has Asperger's. So his brain works a little bit differently, and he is so creative. And I think he would tell the story, probably make a movie about it.
That would be really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, you got three other people. The only, living or dead, real person. Who are you taking with you?
Well, I would probably take my family, so
Hmm?
members of my family, but I'm not very adventurous, so I don't even think I'd go.
Right. You would kind of help plan it and give them advice on the way out, sort
But
of thing. That is completely fair. So whether it's you or not, the party is going to bring one crop to plant and kind of help sustain life and something they can do. Assuming the island can, what is the one vegetable or crop that they are that you're taking with you?
well, I think whatever it would be, it would have to be purple. I don't know if you've noticed,
Right. Yeah.
but I'm a little bit obsessed. So it's eggplant or, grapes, or I don't know. There's purple cauliflower that I've actually used in
Right. Yeah.
recipes. Yes.
So fair enough. Um, if you could focus on improving one area of your life throughout the next year, what would that be?
I'm actually doing it right now. There's a book called LQ Solution that I'm going through with some of my fellow health coaches. And because I want to be a better leader for my clients and for the coaches on my team. And just in general, I want to be a better leader. And so that's something that I'm working. We just started last week.
That's great. And sometimes leadership, we definitely need a lot of help and input in that. Um, when was the last laugh time you laughed till it hurt?
Okay, this is really ridiculous, but it was I was basically on the floor. So I'm 62, way older than you are. In my day, we didn't do selfies, right? We didn't, and I
Right.
don't know if you noticed, I have essential tremors, and so my
Oh,
hands shake. So when I'm holding the camera, it was not good. So I decided I was trying to be smart, and I thought, okay, let me go to a Facebook Live video that I did and just screenshot. I mean, how
mhm.
bad, I did, like, I don't know, 30, 40 screenshots, and I thought one of those should be good. None of those was. If you've noticed, I tend to be very animated when I speak. I use my hands a lot. I make weird faces. And so the faces that I got, every single one was worse than the last one, every single. And so they were eyes closed, mouth. I mean, it just looked ridiculous. And I was laughing so hard, I literally fell on the floor. And I thought, this is too funny not to post. So I posted all of them.
That is awesome. I gotta figure out how the thumbnails work. I know some people do it, but I can almost never do a good like the automatic thumbnails always have me. My mouth is open or
Yes.
something where I'm like, okay, come on. I actually it's been a little bit ago. I actually preached a message on like the freeze frame. You catch somebody's life at one moment and we can make
Oh,
judgments all about it. But there's a
beautiful.
bunch of other moments in life, and so there's a lot more to that. But I'll save that for another time. When was the last time that you cried? I know we almost started doing it a few minutes ago.
Yeah, that was it. But I would have to say my mom's passing.
Yeah.
My mom died 2 months ago. 2 days ago, it was 2 months exactly. So that was hard because I don't know why it hit me this hard, because she had Alzheimer's, and we knew for, 10 years she was going to pass. And she's in a much better place now, I believe, because
Right.
she is no, I mean, it was horrible disease. It's that's one of the, I want to help enough people get healthy
Mhm.
to be able to donate $100,000 to a cure in my mom's name, because this was a horrific disease. And I knew she was going to die, and she's in a better place, but it's just the way it happened and how I found her. It was a tough situation.
Yeah, I know that can be, knowing that it's coming doesn't make it easier. It makes it different, but not easier, I think.
Yeah,
And I'll just share this with you, is a quote that I've heard and I modified it a bit, but I think it's absolutely true. That there's not just like in health, you can't just quickly get to the end goal. Grief is a desert that must be walked on foot. And the addition that I add is, but you don't have to walk alone,
yeah,
especially if you have somebody around you. And again, speaking as Christians too, we have God with us, but if you have a good community as well, you know, we can walk beside you. So um, I hope that you continue to find healing
thank you.
throughout time there. And and so, in your opinion, what does it mean to be good? We're final two questions. So, what does it mean to be good? In the scenario, it's maybe accidentally uh, right on for what I was trying to think of. But if you're at a funeral and you say, like you mentioned your mom, she was a good woman. When you hear the word good, what comes to mind?
I think more than anything, integrity,
Hmm.
because doing good things could be different in different situations. Um, so it's honesty, integrity, those kinds of things. Dealing with people as best you can. Nobody's perfect. I mean, this side of heaven, we're all we all made mistakes, and but I think it's really the integrity and the honesty with which you approach people and things.
I've been getting. I think that's integrity is one of the more common answers that I seem to be getting, whether I'm asking on the show or something else. And I think so. There's a lot to say about integrity. And then the last one. This is not one to think about too much, but again, back to the island. Something goes horribly wrong, and somebody's going to be able to get. I know you're bringing much of your family, but uh, you can very briefly send a message, maybe a paragraph at the most, out to your family outside after you get past the "I love yous" and "I'll miss you," that sort of thing. What is one last really quick short answer advice that you would give to your family?
I think it would be that God loves you and that He wants you with Him.
That is, I would agree. So thank you again so much for answering the questions and being open again to share your story. And this is again a fantastic conversation. And like I'm serious, there are dozens of ways that I had to put a lot of self control to try to go through that kind of what we were planning instead of going off in all the different directions. But again, so I want to thank you so much. Let people know where they can find you if there's any resources that either you have found helpful, but ultimately, how can people find you and connect with you?
Well, I think the best way is to follow me on Facebook. So it's just Jojo Tabaras on Facebook. And there is a link there where they can, there's my form there if they're interested in just having a consultation with me. It's free for to find out about health. But there's also a YouTube link because, as you said, that I have a lot of stuff on YouTube, and I have a newsletter that I just started not too long ago, and the link is also there.
All right, fantastic. And we'll try to put those in all the descriptions, whether whether you're watching on YouTube or all the other places. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was so
No,
much fun.
yeah. So I guess we'll go ahead and sign off here. We'll see you in the next video. I hate doing the like, subscribe, but that is part of the how it all works. So that really helps helps me. So if you like, subscribe, and do all the fun things.
Yep.